My wife was crying on national television when the district attorney's office froze my bank accounts. I stood behind a barricade across from the Beverly Wilshire, watching Callista grip the podium with both hands. Her shoulders shook at exactly the right moments. She paused before every painful sentence, letting the cameras catch the moisture in her eyes. I knew that performance. I had watched her rehearse it for 12 years. I trusted my husband with my career, she said, her voice breaking. I trusted him with my income, my contracts, and my future. I never imagined he would use that trust to control me. Reporters shouted questions. Dorian Frost moved closer and rested one hand on her shoulder. He wore a dark suit with no tie, dressed to look less like a movie star and more like a loyal friend who had rushed to protect a wounded woman. Callista covered his hand with hers. That small gesture told me more than the press conference did. A reporter raised her voice. "Callista, are you accusing your husband of stealing from the production?" Callista lowered her head. Her lips trembled. "My attorneys have advised me not to discuss specific transactions. I can only say that millions of dollars are missing, and the documents carry Alaric's authorization. My authorization, my electronic signature, my office, my cash. They had built the entire lie around my name." Dorian leaned toward the microphone. "Callista has been through enough. She deserves support, not another interrogation." The crowd reacted immediately. Several reporters began shouting at him instead. He turned toward Callista, his jaw tight, playing the protective leading man for every camera in Los Angeles. My phone vibrated. Another client had terminated my firm. I didn't open the email. The subject line was enough. Notice of immediate suspension of representation. A woman beside me recognized my face. She lifted her phone and began recording. "That's him," she said. "That's the husband." Someone behind her shouted, "Parasite." Another voice called, "Give her money back." I looked at Callista across the street. She saw me. For half a second, her expression went blank. Then she turned toward Dorian and pressed herself against his side. By sunrise, my wife had convinced half the country I was a criminal. 3 weeks later, she would be on her knees outside my office, begging that same criminal to save her from prison. But that morning, I was the one being buried, and Callista was holding the shovel. 6 weeks earlier, she had laughed when someone called me the man who saved movies. We were at a private dinner in West Hollywood with studio executives, foreign distributors, and 2 investors from London. Callista sat between Dorian and the director of Crown of Ashes, the biggest film of her career. I sat across from them. Julian Mercer, the film's principal investor, lifted his glass toward me. "Alaric has rescued 3 productions for me," he said. "He finds money where everyone else finds excuses." Dorian smiled without looking at me. "I thought movies were supposed to be made by artists." A few people laughed. Julian's expression stayed flat. "Artists don't get paid when financing collapses." Callista touched Dorian's wrist. "Alaric doesn't save movies," she said. "He reads contracts and tells everyone what they're not allowed to do." More laughter. I set down my glass. Years earlier, Callista had used different words. Her first major film had lost its lead investor 11 days before production. The studio planned to replace her with an actress who had a stronger international sales record. Callista had sat at our kitchen table in an old UCLA sweatshirt, crying into both hands. "This was supposed to be my chance," she whispered. "They're going to replace me before I even get on set." I mortgaged our townhouse and arranged bridge financing through 2 independent lenders. When she saw the papers, she stared at me. "You put the house up?" "I put our equity up. What if the movie fails? Then I work more." She had thrown her arms around my neck. "I'll never forget this." She did forget. She also forgot the tax investigation 4 years later, when her former business manager had buried questionable deductions inside 3 separate entities. I spent 5 months reconstructing records, meeting accountants before sunrise, and proving she had not knowingly filed false returns. Back then, she would crawl in a bed after midnight and rest her head on my shoulder. "You're the reason I can sleep," she'd say. By the time she became an international star, my caution embarrassed her. She wanted people who applauded. I asked questions, and Dorian Frost always applauded. At dinner, he lifted his glass toward Callista. "To artists who take risks." Callista smiled at him. I noticed his hand resting against the back of her chair. I also noticed she didn't move away. I had negotiated enough bad deals to recognize when 2 parties believed the third person at the table was irrelevant. 3 days later, I found the missing money. The first invoice was for Marine Security Consulting in Vancouver. There were no Marine scenes in the movie. The second was for emergency stunt equipment supposedly delivered on a day the stunt unit had not been filming. The third company had charged $860,000 for overseas transportation coordination. Its registered address was a private mailbox outside Las Vegas. I called the production controller, who approved Black Ridge Logistics. Papers rustled on the other end. It's in the system under your authorization. No, it isn't. I'm looking at your signature. Send me the original file. He hesitated. Is there a problem? There are several. I traced the payments through 3 shell companies. $5.4 million had left the production account in less than 4 months. The final beneficiary was an LLC controlled by Mason Pike, Dorian's personal assistant. I printed the records and went directly to Callista's trailer. Her makeup artist was leaving when I arrived. She avoided my eyes and hurried down the steps. I opened the door without knocking. Dorian was inside. He wore a hotel robe over black pants, though he had no costume fitting scheduled. Callista stood beside the counter with one hand pressed against the neckline of her blouse. Neither of them spoke. I dropped the file onto the table. $5.4 million. Dorian glanced at Callista. She folded her arms. What are you talking about? Fake vendors, fake invoices, real transfers. Dorian picked up the top page, barely looked at it, then tossed it back. You came here to accuse me? I came here because your assistant owns the company that received the money. His smile disappeared. Callista stepped between us. Mason handles dozens of business arrangements. This arrangement includes stolen production funds. Dorian's nostrils flared. You've been looking for a reason to come after me since this movie started. I audit risk. You created $5 million of it. No. He pointed at me. You hate that Callista finally works with someone who understands her. I looked at my wife. I haven't mentioned your relationship. Her face tightened. Dorian's hand dropped to his side. The silence answered the question I hadn't asked. Callista recovered first. Dorian, give us a minute. He didn't move. She touched his forearm and softened her voice. Please. He stared at me, then walked toward the door. As he passed, he lowered his voice. You're not as important as you think you are. I met his eyes. Neither are you. That's why you needed someone else's money. His jaw flexed. But he left. Callista waited until the door closed. Then she locked it. He was going to pay it back, she said. I studied her face. Not surprise. Not denial. Fear. You knew. He needed temporary liquidity. Casino debts aren't temporary liquidity. Her eyes widened. That confirmed another suspicion. I continued. And drug suppliers generally don't accept box office projections. Lower your voice. Why? Is there someone else in the trailer? She slapped the file off the table. Pages scattered across the floor. You make everything sound disgusting. Money laundering is disgusting. It wasn't laundering. Then explain the shell companies. She turned away and pressed both hands against the counter. The movie is going to make hundreds of millions. Dorian's back-end deal will cover everything. You helped him fabricate invoices. She looked over her shoulder. I kept the production alive. You hid theft. I protected the film. From what? The consequences of your boyfriend's decisions? She spun around. Don't call him that. You said to here. She realized too late what she had admitted. Her mouth opened, then closed. I nodded slowly. How long? That isn't what we're discussing. How long? Callista? She crossed her arms tighter. You don't get to interrogate me. I'm your husband. You're acting like my attorney. I stopped acting like your attorney when you started protecting the man stealing from my client. Her eyes hardened. Dorian understands what this movie means to me. I mortgaged our home for your first movie. I didn't ask you to. The words landed cleanly. No hesitation. No regret. I watched her lift her chin as though rewriting history could erase the signature on the loan. You cried at our kitchen table and told me your career was over. I was 25, and I was the idiot who believed we were building something together. She walked closer and grabbed my wrist. You can fix this. No. You can restructure the payments. Classify them as talent advances, and give him time to repay the account. That would make me part of the fraud. You've handled worse. Eva handled crises. I don't manufacture cover stories. Her nails pressed into my skin. If you report him, he'll go to prison. That's a possibility. He won't survive it. I pulled my arm free. That's not a legal defense. Her voice rose. Do you hear yourself? You talk about people like they're clauses in a contract. I'm talking about $5 million. I'm talking about a human life. So am I? Mine. She blinked. I picked up the scattered pages. The production stops tomorrow. Julian Mercer gets the report. The bond company gets the report. After that, Dorian can hire counsel. Callista stepped in front of the door. If you do this, we're finished. I looked at her hand, gripping the handle. We were finished before I walked in. I'm just the last person to find out. I completed the report that night. I never got the chance to submit it. At 8 the next morning, 2 studio security officers entered my Century City office with the general counsel and Detective Naomi Reyes from the LAPD's Financial Crimes Unit. Reyes placed a warrant on my desk. Mr. Vaughn, step away from the computer. I did. The studio's general counsel wouldn't meet my eyes. What happened? I asked. He swallowed. We received evidence that you authorized the disputed transfers. I found the transfers. Reyes opened a document folder. Every fraudulent payment carried my electronic signature, not an image pasted onto a page. A clean digital authorization connected to my professional credentials. I stared at the audit trail. That isn't mine. The certificate belongs to your firm. Reyes said. The certificate was copied. A security officer opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. Inside were 6 bundles of cash. I had never seen them before. The general counsel stepped back. Reyes watched my face carefully. Are you saying someone copied your signature? Transfert million. Entered your office. Planted cash. And then reported you? I'm saying someone designed the evidence so that question would sound ridiculous. Her expression didn't change. That's convenient. Convenience is what makes a frame-up work. She took my phone and laptop. Before I left, I looked at the cash again. The bills were too clean. The contracts beneath them were positioned, so their forged signature pages faced upward. Nothing had been hidden. It had been displayed. By noon, the studio removed me from the project. By 3, my accounts were frozen. By 6, Callista's publicist announced the press conference. I called her 14 times. She answered once. What did you do? I asked. Her breathing was steady. I told the truth. You know, I didn't take that money. A pause. Then she said, Dorian was going to replace it. I closed my eyes. So you framed me. You forced this. I was going to report a crime. You were going to destroy him. And your solution was to destroy me? You'll recover. Her voice became softer, almost reasonable. That made it worse. You're 35. You're brilliant. You lose one company. You build another. That's what you do. I gripped the phone until my hand hurt. And Dorian, if he goes to prison, his entire life is over. There it was. My life was valuable only because she believed it could survive being ruined. His life mattered because he was fragile. You decided I was the safer person to sacrifice. I said, You're twisting my words. No. For the first time, I'm hearing them clearly. Her lawyer emailed the divorce papers that night. I signed them the next morning. After the press conference, I went to the Malibu house for my remaining clothes. They were already packed in boxes near the front door. Callista stood beside the staircase. She had removed her wedding ring. Dorian waited in the living room with one hand in his pocket, acting as if he belonged there. I set the signed divorce agreement on the entry table. Callista looked at it, then at me. You signed without negotiating. There's nothing left to negotiate. Her mouth tightened. You think this makes you noble? No. It makes me single. Dorian smirked. I turned toward him. Enjoy the house. His smile widened. Then I added, the mortgage is secured against Callista's production company. His smile faded. Callista's eyes flashed. Get out. I picked up one box. At the door, I stopped. You didn't choose him because he needed you more. She folded her arms. You don't know why I chose him. Yes, I do. You chose him because you believed I would survive whatever you did to me. For once, she had no answer. That night, I met Mara Ellison in the underground garage beneath a closed office building downtown. She had removed my name from our firm earlier that day. She looked exhausted. I'm sorry, she said. If we kept your name on the door, every client would leave. They left anyway. She flinched. I handed her a flash drive. What's this? The original payment records. Before the audit trail was altered. Mara looked around. Alaric, if the police find out I'm helping you, they'll find out you preserved evidence. She held the drive, but didn't put it away. You really think you can prove they copied your signature? I don't need to prove every transaction tonight. Then what do you have? I opened one document on my tablet and pointed to the authorization time, 3:17 p.m. March 8th. So, I was in federal court. Mara frowned. The judge required all electronic devices surrendered before the hearing. My phone and laptop were locked in courthouse security from 1:42 until 5:11. She leaned closer. You couldn't have approved the transfer. No. Remote access? Possible, but only from someone who knew my password recovery answers and had access to our home network. Mara's expression changed. Callista, I closed the tablet. They built a convincing lie, but they made one mistake. What? They thought my signature was the most important part. I took out another page and tapped the name of the final recipient. Mason Pike, Dorian's assistant. The signature tells us how they framed me. I said. The money tells us who they forgot to silence. Mara finally slipped the flash drive into her coat. What are you going to do? I looked at Mason's address. The same thing I've done for every collapsing production in this town. What's that? Find the person who knows the truth, and convince him he'll lose more by staying quiet. The first thing I learned after losing my firm was how expensive it was to be presumed guilty. The second was how cheap people became when they believed I had nothing left. My new office was one room above a bail bond agency in downtown Los Angeles. The landlord wanted 6 months in advance because my accounts were still under review. The desk leaned to one side. The air conditioner rattled, and the frosted glass on the door still carried the outline of the previous tenant's name. I didn't care. Callista had the mansion, the publicists, and millions of followers repeating her version of events. I had timestamps, bank routing numbers, archived invoices, and frightened people who knew Dorian Frost would sacrifice them before he sacrificed himself. Mara entered carrying 2 coffees and a cardboard file box. You look terrible, she said. You removed my name from a law firm. I stopped dressing to impress you. She put a cup beside my laptop. I brought the vendor records. How? Unpaid suppliers filed claims against the production. Their attorneys requested payment histories, and you requested copies from their attorneys. She gave me a tired smile. You taught me to look for doors before breaking windows. I opened the box. Most of the records repeated what I already knew. Fake security firms, inflated transportation charges, equipment that never existed. Then I found a payment authorization attached to an email from Mason Pike. Dorian's assistant had written, approved per DF, route through Silver Anchor LLC. Do not copy production accounting. Mara leaned over my shoulder. DF, Dorian Frost. His lawyer will say it means something else. Then Mason can explain it. You know where he is? I held up my phone. He spends every Tuesday morning at the same diner in Burbank. Mara frowned. How do you know that? His social media. He posts where he eats? No. His girlfriend does. Mason sat in the back booth with a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He saw me before I reached the table. His hand moved toward his phone. Don't. I said. He stood halfway. I'm not talking to you. You already did. I placed the printed email on the table. His eyes dropped to the initials. That doesn't prove anything. It proves you directed money away from production accounting. I follow instructions. That defense works better when you identify who gave them. He glanced toward the door. I sat across from him. You can leave, I said, but when the indictments come, Dorian will say you created the shell companies and stole the money. Mason let out a short laugh. You're the one being investigated. For now. I slid another page toward him. It showed a transfer from Silver Anchor LLC to an offshore gambling platform. The account had been opened using Mason's personal information. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. That wasn't me. The account says it was. Dorian told me it was for an investment. Dorian used your social security number to repay gambling debt. Mason's mouth flattened. I lowered my voice. Callista copied my signature. Dorian used your identity. Do you see the pattern? He looked away. They don't protect people. Mason, they assign people of value. The moment your value drops below your risk, you become the explanation. He shook his head. You don't know anything about him. I know he moved more than $5 million through companies you controlled. He was going to put it back. That's what Callista said. His eyes snapped toward me. That was the first real reaction. I continued. She also said prison would destroy him. But I could rebuild. What do you think Dorian says about you when you're not in the room? Mason's knee began bouncing beneath the table. You're trying to scare me. No. I'm telling you what his lawyers will do. He pushed the documents away. You want me to confess. I want the truth. The truth won't save you. It doesn't have to. It only has to contradict their lie. A waitress approached. Mason raised one hand without looking at her. We're good. When she walked away, he leaned forward. Dorian owes people. How much? I don't know. You created the companies. I didn't know the total. How much? He swallowed. Maybe 3 million to bookmakers. Another 2 to suppliers. Drug suppliers? His jaw tightened. I waited. Finally, he nodded. He got worse after Vancouver. He couldn't make it through a full day without something. What kind of drugs? Whatever kept him up. Whatever brought him down. Whatever stopped his hands from shaking. And Callista knew? Mason gave me a bitter look. She paid for the private doctors. The doctor's name was Everett Sloan. He ran a discreet medical practice in Beverly Hills, the kind that didn't advertise and didn't accept insurance. Mason refused to testify. But before leaving the diner, he wrote Sloan's name on the back of a receipt. He also gave me one warning. Dorian records people. I stopped folding the receipt. Calls, meetings, arguments, everything. Why? He thinks everybody is going to betray him. I looked at Mason. Is he wrong? Mason stood. No. He left without touching his coffee. Mara called as I walked to my car. Callista filed a supplemental declaration in the divorce. What does she want? Most of the marital property. She claims your firm was built using her entertainment income. My firm existed before her first studio contract. She says you used the marriage to gain access to clients. Of course she does. There's more. She's doing an interview tonight. I unlocked the car. What kind? Long-form streaming special. Emotional lighting. No opposing questions. Then it's advertising, not an interview. Alaric, she's going to keep attacking you. I know. Aren't you going to respond? No. Mara exhaled sharply. Silence is starting to look like guilt. Only to people who think social media is a courtroom. It affects the jury pool. So does lying on camera. Let her keep talking. That night, Callista told the country she had confused control with love. I watched from my office while Mara stood beside the desk with her arms folded. Callista sat barefoot on a cream-colored couch, wearing a plain gray sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The interviewer lowered her voice. When did you first realize your marriage was unhealthy? Callista stared at her hands. When I understood that Alaric's help always came with conditions. Mara grabbed the remote. Conditions? You saved her from a tax fraud charge. Let it play. Callista continued. He managed everything. Contracts, accounts, negotiations. At first, I thought that meant he loved me. Later, I realized he needed me dependent on him. The interviewer nodded sympathetically. And Dorian helped you see that? Callista allowed a small smile. Dorian reminded me that I had a voice. Mara shut off the television. I can't listen to this. I opened the transcript on my laptop. She stared at me. What are you doing? Saving her exact words. Why? Because she just claimed I controlled every payment. That hurts you. Until the records show she approved the fake vendors. Mara's anger faded. I highlighted the statement. People lie broadly when they think the details don't matter. I said, later, the details become handcuffs. Detective Reyes called me the next morning. She did not sound friendly. That was an improvement. I met her at the downtown financial crimes office. She placed a payment authorization on the table between us. March 8th, she said, 3:17 p.m. I was in federal court. We confirmed that. I kept my face still. She watched me. The courthouse logs show your devices were surrendered. So now you know I didn't personally approve it. I know you didn't approve it from your phone or laptop. Someone accessed my credential remotely. That's one possibility. It's the only one consistent with the evidence. She leaned back. Your wife knew your passwords? She knew the answers to every recovery question. Anyone else? My former home network technician. 2 senior staff members. Possibly our outside cybersecurity contractor. Dorian? No reason he would know them directly, but Callista did. Yes. Reyes tapped another photograph. It showed the cash found in my office. The bank straps were issued 4 days after the contract underneath the money was supposedly signed. I looked at her. She had found the same problem I had. Somebody assembled the evidence later. I said, or replaced the straps. Why would I replace the straps on cash I was hiding? Her eyes narrowed. You're very calm for someone facing prison. I bill by the hour. Panic is expensive. For the first time, the corner of her mouth moved. Then she pushed another file toward me. Tell me about Dr. Everett Sloan. I did not touch the file. What have you found? Several payments from Callista Monroe's personal services company for Dorian's treatment. That's your theory. It's more than a theory. Reyes studied me. Do you have medical records? No. Then don't overstate it. I have a witness who says Dorian was chemically dependent during production. Who? Someone you'll have to protect before I identify him. Her expression cooled. You don't set conditions for police cooperation, and you don't get to expose a witness to Dorian's creditors. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she closed the file. You're either innocent or very good at pretending. I'm a lawyer. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Dorian missed 2 interviews that week. His publicist blamed exhaustion. A production assistant called Mara anonymously and described him throwing a glass bottle inside his trailer after Callista refused to stay overnight. Another crew member said Dorian had shoved a camera operator for filming him between takes. The studio kept promoting the movie. Too much money had already been spent. Canceling the premiere would admit the project was unstable. So everyone pretended the foundation wasn't cracking. Then someone broke into my office. I arrived before 8 and found the door unlocked. The laptop was still there. So was the television, the printer, and the small amount of cash in my desk. My files had been opened and rearranged. A yellow note sat on the keyboard. Stop before somebody doesn't wake up. Mara read it twice. We're calling the police. Take a picture first. Alaric, photograph the room before anyone moves anything. She raised her phone with shaking hands. You think Dorian did this? No. Callista? She prefers cameras. Then who? The people Dorian owes. Mara lowered the phone. That means this is bigger than fraud. It was always bigger. I placed the note inside a plastic document sleeve. Send copies of everything to the encrypted archive. We already have backups. Make another. She stared at me. You expected this? I expected them to get nervous. This isn't nervous. This is a threat. No. A threat tells me what they want. This tells me they're running out of options. Callista contacted me 2 days later. She asked to meet at a restaurant in Santa Monica before opening hours. She entered through the kitchen wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. I almost laughed. You held a press conference accusing me of fraud. I said, now you're worried someone might see us having coffee? She removed the glasses. You look tired. You look expensive. Her lips pressed together. I sat across from her. What do you want? I want this to stop. Then confess. I'm serious. So am I. She placed a folder between us. Inside was a proposed settlement. She would clarify that some payments might have been misunderstood. In exchange, I would sign a confidentiality agreement and stop investigating Dorian. I closed the folder. This doesn't clear me. It reduces the damage. It says I exercised poor oversight. You were the risk consultant. I discovered the theft. She leaned forward. If you keep pushing, the studio will destroy what's left of your career. What's left? Her eyes flickered. My firm is gone. My clients left. My accounts are frozen. You turned our marriage into a public trial. I can help reverse that. No, you can tell the truth. Her hand tightened around the edge of the table. You're making this personal. You copied my signature and tried to send me to prison. It became personal before breakfast. Dorian made mistakes. He committed crimes. He was desperate. So were the people whose paychecks depended on that production. She lowered her voice. You don't understand him. I understand him perfectly. He steals from people who protect him, then calls his desperation an excuse. Callista's face hardened. You always hated him. I barely thought about him until I found his hand in the production account and yours in my marriage. She went still. Then she whispered, you have no proof of the affair. I don't need it for the financial case. Her confidence slipped. I noticed. You're afraid of something. I said. She stood too quickly and grabbed her bag. You're going to end up alone. I already was. I just didn't know it. She stared down at me. If you continue, every remaining person in this town will turn against you. I looked around the empty restaurant. They already did. For the first time since the scandal began, Callista had nothing left to threaten me with. She walked out without taking the settlement folder. Premiere week began under a wall of publicity. Callista and Dorian smiled on red carpets. Entertainment sites published stories about their undeniable chemistry. The studio released clips of them kissing in the movie, while Callista's fans celebrated her freedom from me. Behind the scenes, the investors were panicking. Julian Mercer called from a private number. I need a straight answer. He said, is the completion bond valid? Not if Dorian's medical condition was deliberately concealed. Silence. Then he asked, how certain are you? Certain enough that Callista paid a private physician through her services company. If the insurer voids coverage, we could lose the entire production. You should have considered that before letting your star hold a press conference instead of submitting to an audit. His voice sharpened. I didn't know she was lying. You knew she was useful. That's not the same thing. In Hollywood, it usually is. He exhaled. What do you want? My name cleared. That may take time. then keep losing money. I ended the call. Mara looked up from the other desk. You just hung up on Julian Mercer. He'll call back. How do you know? Because fear makes powerful men polite. My phone rang 10 minutes later. It wasn't Julian. It was Callista. Her name filled the screen. I nearly let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. She was sobbing. Not the controlled breathing from the press conference. Not the pauses she used for cameras. These were broken sounds. Alaric, she gasped. I need you. I stood behind her. Someone shouted. He doesn't have a pulse. Another voice yelled for naloxone. What happened? I asked. It's Dorian. My hand tightened around the phone. Where are you? At the house. The party is still going. What did he take? I don't know. How long has he been unconscious? She hesitated. Callista, maybe 10 minutes. 12. Call 911. I can't. My voice went cold. Call them now. There are reporters outside. Investors are here. If an ambulance comes through the gate, they'll know. Then let them know. You have doctors. The private team you used for that actor in Malibu. Call them. Bring them through the service entrance. That team handled a voluntary rehabilitation transfer. They don't hide overdoses. Please. She started crying harder. Get someone here quietly, and I'll withdraw everything. I'll tell them you didn't steal the money. I'll fix your accounts. I'll give you whatever you want. I looked at Mara. She had already understood. Is Dorian breathing? I asked. I don't know. Put the phone near him. Alaric, listen to me. He can't die in my house. There it was. Not save him. Not help him. He couldn't die in her house. Because his death would expose her. If he dies here. She whispered. I'm finished. I opened the emergency call screen on Mara's phone. You're worried about the wrong person. What are you doing? What you should have done 12 minutes ago. Her breathing stopped. Alaric, don't. I dialed 911. Then I gave the dispatcher Callista's address. The 911 dispatcher kept me on the line while paramedics were sent to Callista's estate. Is the patient breathing? She asked. I'm not at the location. Who is with him? My wife. I almost corrected myself. Callista was still legally my wife, but the word felt dishonest. The dispatcher asked, can she perform CPR? I switched back to Callista's call. Put me on speaker. What did you do? She whispered. Is Dorian breathing? Alaric, cancel the ambulance. Is he breathing? She made a broken sound. No. Put the phone down and start compressions. I don't know how. You've filmed 2 medical dramas. That was acting. Then stop acting and listen. I gave her instructions. She shouted at someone nearby to move Dorian onto the floor. A man said, we should carry him downstairs before anyone sees. No. I snapped. Don't move him anywhere except onto his back. Callista's breathing came fast through the speaker. He's turning blue. Start compressions. I'm trying. Harder. He could have broken ribs. Broken ribs heal. Dead men don't. Mara stood beside me while I relayed the dispatcher's directions. Her face was pale, but her hands were steady as she wrote down every word Callista said. After less than a minute, Callista stopped compressions. I can't do this. Keep going. My publicist is downstairs. We can bring Dr. Sloan. Dr. Sloan isn't an emergency room. He knows Dorian. He helped hide Dorian. Callista went silent. I heard sirens through her phone. Then she hissed. You did this to me. I looked at Mara. No. I said. You waited 12 minutes before asking for help. You did this to yourself. The reporters outside Callista's gates filmed everything. The first ambulance arrived with a fire engine behind it. 2 patrol cars followed. Guests began leaving through the driveway, shielding their faces from camera flashes. Entertainment reporters who had come to cover a celebration were suddenly broadcasting a possible overdose. Mara drove while I stayed on the phone with Detective Reyes. You called it in? Reyes asked. Yes. Why were you contacted? Callista wanted a private medical team. To avoid police? To avoid everyone. Reyes was quiet for a moment. Is this connected to the financial case? I believe drugs purchased with stolen production funds may be inside that house. That's a serious allegation. So was stealing $5 million. When we reached the estate, an officer stopped our car at the gate. Before I could explain, Reyes walked over and showed her badge. He's with me. The officer lifted the barrier. Mara looked at me. You're going inside? Callista made me part of the emergency when she called. She may try to blame you again. Then I want witnesses when she does. Dorian was being carried down the stairs when I entered. A paramedic squeezed air into his lungs while another monitored his pulse. Dorian's shirt had been cut open. His skin looked gray, and one arm hung off the stretcher. Callista followed them barefoot. She still wore the silver dress from the party. One side was stained where she had knelt beside him. When she saw me, she stopped. "You came." "I came to speak with the police." Her expression twisted. "You couldn't give me 1 hour." "You didn't have 1 hour." The paramedics pushed the stretcher through the front doors. Callista stepped toward me and grabbed my sleeve. "You need to tell them this was an accident." I looked at her hand. "Take it off." She didn't. "Alaric, please." "They're asking what he took." "What did he take?" "I don't know." "You knew enough to avoid calling an ambulance." I panicked. "No." "You negotiated." Her fingers loosened. Behind her, Detective Reyes entered with 2 uniformed officers. "Ms. Monroe," Reyes said, "we need to speak privately." Callista straightened and tried to recover the expression she used in interviews. "Of course. I want to cooperate." Reyes glanced at me. She already started. The first drugs were found in Dorian's overnight bag. One officer unzipped a side pocket and removed 2 plastic packages, several unlabeled pill bottles, and a glass vial. Callista backed away. "I've never seen those." The officer looked at her. "This bag was in your bedroom. He brought it tonight." A woman from the district attorney's office pointed toward the bathroom. "There's blood on the counter and residue near the sink." Callista's publicist, Harper Lane, hurried into the room. "My client will not answer more questions without counsel." Reyes raised one eyebrow. "You're her publicist." "I've called her attorneys." "Good. Until they arrive. No one leaves." Harper's face tightened. "There are journalists outside." Reyes looked toward the windows. "That problem appears to be yours." I almost admired her. An officer came out of Callista's home office carrying a clear evidence bag. Inside was a USB drive marked with my initials. Reyes turned toward me. "Recognize it?" "No." Callista stepped forward. "That belongs to Alaric." I looked at her. She didn't even hesitate. Reyes asked, "Why is his property in your desk?" "He worked from this house. After your separation, he must have left it before." The officer whispered something to Reyes, then handed her a printed label recovered beside the drive. It read, "AV Digital Signature. Clean Master." Reyes held it where Callista could see. My wife's face lost its color. "Still mine?" I asked. Her eyes flashed with hatred. Harper stepped between us. "No more questions." Reyes handed the evidence bag back to the officer. "We'll let the digital forensics team ask them." The search expanded after police found production account records beside the signature template. Blank invoices were stacked in Callista's desk. A folder contained the names of 3 shell companies I had traced. Another file included confidential correspondence with the film's completion bond insurer. Callista's attorney, Nolan Price, arrived 30 minutes later and immediately demanded that the search stop. Reyes pointed toward the drugs recovered in plain view. "We're securing evidence connected to a medical emergency and an active financial investigation." Nolan lowered his voice. "You're treating a famous actress like a trafficker because her guest overdosed." Reyes folded her arms. "I'm treating her like the homeowner whose office contains narcotics, forged signatures, and stolen production records." Callista stood behind him with her arms wrapped around herself. When Nolan turned away, she moved toward me. "You can explain those documents." "I intend to." "Not like that." Her voice dropped. "You can say you authorized emergency transfers. You can say Dorian misunderstood how the advances were supposed to work. You said here, you're asking me to confess to the crime you framed me for. I'm asking you to stop this from getting worse. For you. For both of us." "There is no both of us." She looked toward the officers. "If these records become public, everything is gone. You should have thought about that before storing them beside my forged signature. Dorian put them there. Then tell Detective Reyes." Her mouth tightened. "You know what they'll do to me." I leaned closer. "No." "Callista, I know what you try to do to me." Her eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted you in prison. You planted cash in my office. That was Dorian's idea. You repeated the accusations on television. I was scared. You weren't scared. You were prepared." She shook her head hard. "I only delayed calling the ambulance because I panicked. I pulled out my phone. Emergency dispatch recorded our call." She froze. "They heard you offer to withdraw false accusations in exchange for secret treatment." Her lips parted. "They heard you say Dorian couldn't die in your house because it would ruin you." Callista pressed one hand to her mouth. For the first time that night, she looked genuinely afraid. Dorian's phone was found beside the bathtub. The screen was cracked, and part of the case was wet. An officer sealed it in an evidence bag and carried it past us. Mason's warning came back to me. Dorian records people. I called Reyes aside. He may have recordings. Of what? Everything. She studied me. How do you know? His assistant told me he records calls and arguments because he expects betrayal. Would the data be stored locally? Someone that paranoid would use automatic cloud backup. Reyes looked toward the evidence bag. You realize that phone could contain evidence against you. 2. I hope it does. She frowned. I want every conversation he recorded with me. Context matters. By dawn, Dorian was alive, but in critical condition. Callista's publicist released a statement, calling it an unexpected medical emergency. The statement lasted 23 minutes. Then footage appeared of officers carrying drug evidence from the estate. An entertainment site reported that forged financial documents had also been recovered. Another outlet obtained confirmation that the overdose was connected to an existing production fund investigation. Mara and I watched the coverage from my office. On the screen, an anchor replayed Callista's old press conference. I trusted my husband with everything, Callista said in the clip. The image cut to police carrying boxes from her house. Mara muted the television. How long before the studio turns on her? They already have. My phone rang. Julian Mercer. I answered. What did the police find? He demanded. Ask your attorneys. I'm asking you. Drugs, production records, and a copy of my electronic signature. Julian went silent. Then he said, the studio is suspending the premiere. That's sensible. The insurers froze coverage. That's predictable. We need you to help reconstruct the payments. You fired me. I relied on false information. You relied on convenient information. His voice hardened. Name your price. My innocence isn't a consulting fee. What do you want? Alaric? A public withdrawal of the complaint. Full cooperation with the investigation. Preservation of every production record. And after that, then we discuss my rate. The cloud data from Dorian's phone changed everything. Reyes asked me to come to the financial crimes office that afternoon. She didn't offer coffee. She didn't need to. She pressed play on the first recording. Callista's voice filled the room. You can't send it directly to the casino. Route it through Mason's company first. Dorian answered. Alaric will see it. Not if we classify the invoices as security and transportation. A chair scraped in the recording. Dorian said. And if he reports it? Callista's voice became colder. Then we make it look like he approved it. Reyes paused the audio. I said nothing. She played the next file. Dorian asked. How do I copy the signature certificate? Callista answered. I know his recovery answers. His mother's maiden name. The street he grew up on. Everything. My hands stayed flat on the table. Reyes watched me instead of the screen. The next recording was worse. Dorian laughed. You really think people will believe Alaric stole from you? Callista replied without hesitation. Of course they will. I'm the frightened wife. He's the controlling lawyer. As long as we say Alaric approved it, everyone will believe me. Reyes stopped the recording. The room went quiet. You were right, she said. I know. No celebration? My wife planned to send me to prison. I'm not sure what victory is supposed to look like. She pushed a folder toward me. The cloud account also contains photographs. I opened it. Callista and Dorian in our marital bedroom. Callista and Dorian inside her trailer. Callista asleep against his shoulder in a Toronto hotel. Dorian kissing her on a balcony during the London press tour, while I was in Los Angeles fixing a financing dispute for a movie. I closed the folder. Reyes asked, do you need a minute? No. You don't have to pretend this doesn't affect you. I'm not pretending. I slid the folder back. It affected me months ago. Now it's evidence. The district attorney suspended the investigation against me that evening. The studio withdrew its fraud complaint the next morning. By noon, Julian Mercer's company issued a public statement admitting it had relied on falsified records and misleading testimony. They apologized, not because they had suddenly developed principles, because their lawyers calculated that continuing the lie would cost more than admitting it. Dorian regained consciousness 2 days later. His attorney explained the charges waiting for him. Narcotics possession, conspiracy, wide fraud, insurance fraud, and potential trafficking-related offenses. Dorian responded the way I expected. He chose himself. He gave prosecutors the cloud password and claimed the frame-up had been Callista's plan. He said she manipulated him while he was struggling with addiction. He said he had been afraid of her. He said he only followed instructions because she controlled the movie and his career. When Callista learned he was cooperating, she called Nolan Price a liar. Dorian loves me. she said. Nolan's reply leaked to the press. He loves a reduced sentence. Detective Reyes returned my personal files a week later. She placed the final box on my desk. The criminal inquiry against you is closed. Formally? She handed me the notice. Formally. I read the first paragraph twice. No charges. No continuing suspicion. No recommendation for prosecution. My name was mine again. Reyes nodded toward the new plaque Mara had installed on the door. Von Risk Legal Strategies. You rebuilt quickly, she said. I had practice. She almost smiled. You were right about the evidence being too convenient. Convenient evidence is expensive. Someone always pays to build it. After she left, Mara stepped into my office. There's someone outside. Client? She gave me a strange look. Not exactly. I walked into the hallway. Callista sat on the floor beside the locked glass doors. She had no publicist, no security, and no makeup team. Her hair was pulled back, and dark circles showed beneath her eyes. A thick folder rested in her lap. When she saw me, she stood too quickly. The folder slipped from her hands. Criminal complaints, canceled endorsement contracts, and letters from investors scattered across the floor. She stared at them, then at me. Her chin trembled. I need your help. I said nothing. Callista lowered herself onto her knees. The studio is suing me. The insurers are coming after everything. Nolan says I could go to prison. Her hands shook as she gathered the papers. You know the contracts better than anyone. You know the production accounts. You know how Dorian manipulated me. I looked down at the woman who had once told the world I used our marriage to control her. Now she was holding out the same marriage like a legal defense. Please, Alaric. She pressed the folder against her chest. You're the only lawyer who can save me. Callista stayed on her knees outside my office as two associates walked past her pretending not to stare. She held the criminal complaints against her chest. You're the only lawyer who understands all of it, she said. The financing, the insurance, the transfers. You know how Dorian operated. I know how both of you operated. Her face tightened. Please let me explain. You explained at the press conference. That wasn't the truth. I'm aware. I unlocked the glass door, but didn't step aside. Callista looked past me toward the office. You're not going to let me in? No. Her mouth opened slightly. For years, doors had opened before she touched them. Assistants ran ahead. Security cleared hallways. Producers rearranged schedules because Callista Monroe had arrived. Now she was kneeling in front of a man she had called a parasite on national television. And she still expected access. She slowly stood. I'll pay whatever you charge. You can't hire me. I still have assets. That isn't the issue. She pulled a document from the folder. The Malibu property is worth $12 million. The New York apartment is worth $6 million. I'll transfer both to you. You're offering me property currently targeted by fraud claims. They're still mine. For now. Her fingers bent around the paper. You always find a solution. I found one. Hope flashed across her face. I handed her a single-page notice Mara had prepared. Callista read the heading. Declination of representation. Her eyes moved quickly over the conflict language. You're refusing? I'm a witness. I'm also the victim of your alleged crimes. Alleged? She gave a weak, desperate laugh. You've already decided I'm guilty. I heard your voice on the recordings. Dorian edited them. Digital forensics says he didn't. He took things out of context. What context makes copying my signature legal? She looked away. I continued. What context makes planting cash in my office reasonable? That wasn't my idea. You helped create the circumstances. Dorian was out of control. You defended him when you thought he could protect your career. Now he's cooperating with prosecutors. So you want to call him unstable. He manipulated me. You said here. Callista stepped closer. He threatened to expose us. He said he would ruin the movie. Ruin me. Tell everyone about the drugs. When? She blinked. When did he start threatening you? I don't remember the exact date. Before or after you taught him how to access my signature certificate. Her lips pressed together. Before or after you told him everyone would believe the frightened wife. She shook her head. You don't understand what it was like. I understand exactly what it was like. You thought you were untouchable. Her eyes filled. I was trying to protect someone I loved. You were protecting yourself. I loved him. No. You loved how he made you feel. Dorian told you that you were brilliant, brave, misunderstood. I told you when the numbers were wrong. That isn't fair. It's accurate. Callista's voice broke. We were married for 10 years. You remembered that when you needed legal representation. She looked down at the refusal notice. What am I supposed to do? Hire a criminal defense attorney. They don't understand the contracts. They don't need to. They can hire experts. I need you. No. You need the version of me who fixed every problem before it reached you. Her hand rose as if she wanted to touch my arm, then stopped. Is he gone? I frowned. The man I married. She whispered. The man who said he would always protect me. He disappeared when you tried to send him to prison. The divorce hearing took place 3 weeks later. Callista arrived through a side entrance with 2 attorneys and no wedding ring. Reporters filled the courthouse steps. Inside, she sat across from me and kept looking at my hands. Her attorney argued that my firm had benefited from Callista's celebrity and that our marital assets should be divided accordingly. Mara slid an accounting summary toward my lawyer. The records showed the opposite. My original firm had existed before Callista's first studio contract. Its entertainment clients had generated independent revenue. The mortgage I placed on our townhouse had funded the film that launched her career. Not my business. The judge reviewed the documents. Ms. Monroe's position appears inconsistent with the financial records. Callista leaned toward her attorney and whispered sharply. He raised a hand. Your Honor, my client's access to information was limited because Mr. Vaughn controlled the accounts. My attorney stood. Mr. Vaughn's alleged control was the basis of a public fraud accusation that has now been disproven. The evidence indicates Ms. Monroe accessed his professional credentials, falsified approvals, and used marital information to assist in a frame-up. Callista's shoulders stiffened. Her attorney said, "Those criminal matters have not yet been adjudicated." No, the judge replied, "But this court will not treat potentially fraudulent transfers as legitimate marital obligations." When the hearing ended, the court preserved my ownership of Vaughn Risk Legal Strategies and separated me from liabilities connected to Callista's conduct. Outside, cameras crowded the walkway. Callista pushed past her attorney and came toward me. "Alaric." I kept walking. She caught my sleeve. "We need to talk." I stopped and looked at her hand. She released me. Reporters shouted our names. Callista lowered her voice. "They're going to photograph you walking away from me. That's what I'm doing." Her jaw tightened. "You don't have to humiliate me." I almost laughed. "You held a press conference. I made a mistake. You made a campaign." Her eyes flicked toward the cameras. "We were married for 10 years. You made decisions every day during those 10 years. The affair wasn't one mistake. The stolen money wasn't one mistake. The forged documents weren't one mistake. I was under pressure. You planned the victim narrative before police questioned me." Her face changed. She hadn't known I had seen those emails. I leaned closer. "Your publicist scheduled the interview, selected the phrases, and prepared Dorian's statement before the studio searched my office." Callista whispered, "Where did you get that?" "Discovery." She glanced at her attorneys. "You're helping the investors sue me. I'm helping them understand the fraud. You want to take everything." "No. I want back what you tried to take from me." "What?" "My name." I stepped away before she could answer. The photographers captured her standing alone. I didn't arrange that image. For once, Callista's consequences needed no director. The investor lawsuits arrived in waves. Julian Mercer's company demanded repayment of the stolen funds. Production delays, legal fees, and losses caused by invalidated insurance. The completion bond company filed its own action. The studio sought damages for the suspended release and the collapse of its marketing campaign. Every plaintiff wanted the same thing: someone else to absorb the cost. Dorian made sure that person was Callista. His attorneys negotiated with prosecutors. In return for cooperation, he provided passwords, bank instructions, recordings, and messages. Then he issued a statement through counsel. He claimed Callista had designed the entire plan. He described himself as an addicted actor under the influence of a powerful star. When Mara read the statement, she put it on my desk. "He's turning her into the mastermind. He learned from her." "Do you believe him?" "Partly." "Which part?" "That Callista proposed framing me." "And the rest?" Dorian was never helpless. He opened the accounts, moved the money, and planted the evidence. Mara sat across from me. Will prosecutors believe his victim's story? They don't have to believe it. They only have to find his cooperation useful. Callista called 3 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. On the 4th call, she left a voicemail. "Dorian is lying. He's making me sound like a monster. You know I'm not that person." I listened once. Then I forwarded the message to my attorney. Callista still thought my memories were evidence in her favor. She had forgotten that I remembered everything. Her agency dropped her first. The announcement said the relationship had ended by mutual agreement. It hadn't. Her beauty contract was canceled the next morning. 2 luxury brands followed. A studio replaced her in an upcoming thriller. Then her former publicist, Harper Lane, hired her own attorney. Harper turned over emails showing that Callista had approved the language used against me. One draft read, "Emphasize financial control. Avoid specific dates. Position Dorian as emotional support only." Another read, "Alaric's silence will look like guilt. Do not give him time to respond before the press conference." Mara placed the printed messages beside the television. "Your wife understood public trials better than legal ones. Public trials are easier. No rules of evidence. Do you want to release a statement?" "No." "Still, the facts are doing fine without my help." On screen, a commentator replayed Callista's interview about reclaiming her independence. The clip was followed by her email directing Dorian to route money through Mason's company. The same host who had called me controlling now described me as the quiet architect behind Callista's career. I switched off the television. Mara raised an eyebrow. "You waited months for this reversal." "I waited for my name to be cleared. I don't need strangers to love me. That's probably why you'll survive this town." I survived, Callista. Hollywood is less personal. Julian offered me a partnership in his production company. I declined. Then he offered financing for my firm in exchange for equity. I declined that too. He sat across from me with both hands resting on his cane. "You're turning down access most lawyers would kill for. I've seen what happens when access becomes ownership." "I'm not Callista." "No. You're an investor. That means you'll behave as long as our interests match." He smiled. "Fair." I agreed to represent selected productions at full market rates. No favors. No hidden discounts. No mortgages placed on my personal life to rescue someone else's dream. Mara became a full partner. Her name joined mine on the internal documents. Though she insisted the public brand remain Vaughn Risk Legal Strategies. "You're the one people call when a movie is collapsing," she said. "And you're the one who kept the evidence when everyone else ran." She held out her hand. 50-50? I shook it. 50-50. We created a production integrity division focused on protecting investors, crews, and independent filmmakers from hidden financial risks. Our first major case involved a producer using payroll funds to finance a private real estate project. We caught it before anyone missed a paycheck. After the meeting, Mara leaned against my door. "You look happier." "I look employed." "That isn't the same thing." "No." I admitted, "It isn't." I bought back the West Hollywood townhouse I had once mortgaged for Callista's first film. The new owner had renovated the kitchen and removed the table where Callista cried about losing her career. That helped. I didn't buy it because I missed our marriage. I bought it because I wanted the place to stop representing what I gave away. Mara helped me carry in 2 boxes. She set one down and looked around. "No pictures?" "Not yet. Not even family. My parents are sending some." She noticed the framed mortgage release document on the counter. "You're displaying that?" "It's the first problem I solved for Callista. And the last reminder." I thought about it. "No. It's a warning." "About what?" "I spent years thinking loyalty meant absorbing damage." Mara nodded. "Loyalty without limits is permission." I looked at the document again. Callista had not destroyed my life in one moment. I had helped her by teaching her that I would always repair what she broke. That lesson ended with me. Callista came to my office one final time before her plea hearing. She wore a plain black coat. No assistant followed her. No security guard waited by the elevator. Mara stepped into my office. "She's here." "Did she make an appointment?" "No." "Then she has 5 minutes." Callista entered holding our old wedding photograph. She placed it on my desk. "We were happy. We were younger. You loved me." "Yes." She flinched at the past tense. "I finally understand what you did for me. You understand the value now that you have to pay for it yourself." "That's cruel." "It's honest." She sat down without being invited. "My new lawyers say Dorian's cooperation could add years to my sentence." "That's possible. They think I should take a plea." "That sounds reasonable." Her eyes widened. "You want me to plead guilty?" "What I want is irrelevant. You know I wasn't the only one involved." "No one said you were." "He stole the money. You helped hide it. He planted the cash. You helped frame the narrative. He had the drugs. You paid doctors to conceal his condition from insurers." She gripped the wedding photograph. "I was afraid. You were afraid of losing a movie. I was afraid of losing everything. So you gave them me instead." Her mouth trembled. "I never thought they would put you in prison. You built evidence designed to make that happen. I thought the studio would fire you. I thought there would be a settlement. You thought you could ruin me just enough." She began crying. I made the worst decision of my life. No, you made the decision that revealed your life. I opened my desk drawer. Inside were two items: my wedding ring, another copy of the refusal of representation notice. I placed both in front of her. Callista stared at the ring. I'll give you everything, she whispered. The houses, my remaining accounts, the art, all of it. I don't want your property. Then what do you want? Nothing from you. She shook her head. That can't be true. It is. You spent 12 years building my career. That was my mistake. Was all of it a mistake? No. My answer surprised her. I continued. Loving you wasn't the mistake. Believing love required me to keep protecting you from consequences was. Callista pressed both hands against the desk. Dorian says I planned everything. Your own voice supports him. He's twisting it to save himself. I know. Then help me prove that. He is lying about some things. Unfortunately, the truth is still enough to convict you. Her shoulders collapsed. I can't go to prison. You were willing to let me. That was different. The words came out before she could stop them. I leaned back. How? She stared at me. Then her voice cracked. You could survive. There it was again. The belief beneath every betrayal. My strength had made me disposable. Callista wiped her cheeks. I'm 33. My career is gone. Everyone hates me. I can't start over. I pushed the refusal notice toward her. You once told me losing a company didn't matter because I could build another one. Her face crumpled. Alaric, now I'm giving that advice back to you. She slid out of the chair and dropped to her knees beside my desk. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You're leaving me alone. You chose that. She reached toward my hand. I moved it away. Are you really willing to watch your wife go to prison? I looked at the wedding ring between us. My wife disappeared the day she decided I should go to prison for her lover. Callista covered her mouth and sobbed. I stood. The meeting was over. 3 months later, Callista accepted a plea agreement. She received prison time, restitution obligations, and years of supervised release. Dorian received a reduced sentence for cooperation, but the studio stopped calling. His creditors seized what remained of his assets. Crown of Ashes was sold to a streaming platform at a fraction of its projected value. Julian called it an expensive lesson. I called it predictable. On the afternoon Callista was sentenced. I watched the report from my office with the sound muted. Mara stepped in. You have a call from an independent producer. What kind of problem? Financing collapsed 6 days before principal photography. I picked up the phone. A nervous young man introduced himself. Mr. Vaughn. Everyone says you're the man who saves impossible movies. I looked at the old mortgage release document on my shelf. For years, I had worked behind Callista's name. Now mine was on the door. I don't save movies, I said. I make sure the right people survive them. Callista believed destroying me would buy Dorian a future. In the end, the man she protected became the witness who buried her. And the husband she sacrificed became the one person she could never hire back.